Some stories feel like they're carved into history. They're about ambition, about giants, and about a single moment, a single day that can send a shockwave across the entire globe. Well, this is one of those stories. This is the fall of Lehman Brothers. Just think about that for a second. One bank. It sounds like an exaggeration, right? But it's not. The collapse of this single institution wasn't just a ripple. No, it was a full-blown financial earthquake, and it reshaped our world in ways we are still, to this day, trying to understand. Can you picture it? A shining glass tower in New York City late at night. The usual buzz of making money is gone. Instead, there's just this silent, creeping panic. A legacy, something built over 158 years, was just moments from vanishing into thin air. To really get how we ended up here, we have to go back, way back, to the beginning. Yeah, to understand the fall, you first have to appreciate the rise. See, Lehman Brothers wasn't born a Wall Street behemoth. It started out as something much, much smaller and a lot more humble. It's really the classic American dream story, isn't it? Three immigrant brothers, they come over from Germany and they started tiny business in Alabama. But they were smart, they were hungry, and they saw opportunity where others didn't. They went from selling goods to trading cotton, and pretty soon they were in banking. They were financing the very things that built modern America: railroads, airlines, you name it. Lehman wasn't just another bank, it was woven into the fabric of the country. All right, let's hit the fast forward button. We're jumping ahead more than a century to the early 2000s. The mood on Wall Street, well, it was electric. Money was practically free. Credit was everywhere. And Lehman Brothers, they were about to make the biggest, riskiest bet in their long history. And this was the engine that fueled the whole boom. The idea on the surface sounded so simple, almost brilliant. You take thousands of home loans, you bundle them all together into these complicated things called mortgage-backed securities, and then you sell little slices to investors all over the world. Lehman Brothers, under its CEO Dick Fuld, didn't just dip a toe in this market. Nope, they cannonballed right into the deep end. And this was the belief, or maybe the delusion, at the heart of it all. The logic felt unbreakable. Of course people will pay their mortgage, right? Housing is the safest bet there is. And for years, the insane profits rolling in just seemed to prove them right. This whole strategy was really driven from the very top. Dick Fuld's leadership style was the stuff of legend. He was aggressive, he never backed down, and he pushed his firm to take bigger and bigger and bigger risks. And you know what? For a while, it worked like a charm. The stock price went through the roof, they made billions, and this aura of invincibility started to form around Lehman Brothers. But we all know how these stories go. What goes up must eventually come down. And that glittering empire, well, its foundation was built on something a lot shakier than anyone wanted to admit. The party was just about over. And right here, this is the fatal flaw. The whole thing was built on a hidden risk. While the world saw these solid, prime mortgages, the foundation was being quietly replaced with subprime loans. These were risky loans given to people with poor credit, often with little proof of income. So what happens when those homeowners can't make their payments? The whole house of cards starts to teeter. That's what you heard from the top brass as the first cracks started showing up in 2007. Publicly, it was all confidence, all strength. But inside those walls, they knew the truth. They knew their books were filled with toxic assets, the debts were astronomical, and, as one of them put it, the firm was bleeding from within. By early 2008, you just couldn't deny it anymore. The momentum was just too strong, and it was all heading in one direction. The stage was officially set for one of the most historic collapses the world had ever seen. And then it happened. Over one absolutely frantic weekend in September of 2008, the when finally arrived. And the entire global financial system was about to get a shock like never before. Those last few days were just a blur of desperation. Frantic phone calls, all-night meetings, they were begging for a buyer. Bank of America, Barclays, anyone. They even went to the U.S. government for a bailout. But the firm was just too toxic. Nobody would touch it. And as those final hours ticked away, the horrible reality set in. There was going to be no rescue. The scale, it's just mind-boggling. $600 billion. To this day, the largest bankruptcy filing in American history.
It's a number so huge, it's almost meaningless. It's hard to even wrap your head around it.
But behind that giant number was another one. 26,000 people. Employees. From New York to London to Tokyo. One day they had a job, and the next, their lives were just completely turned upside down. A 158-year-old institution, a pillar of Wall Street, a piece of the American story. In the blink of an eye, it was all gone. And the impact was immediate. The markets went into a nosedive. Credit markets around the world froze solid. Panic went global. This wasn't just about one bank failing. It was the moment a myth was shattered. The myth that some companies were just too weak to fail. Well, we all learned that they weren't. The collapse itself was really just the beginning of the story. The fallout, the very real human cost, and the lessons we tried to learn from those ashes, they're still shaping the world we live in right now. So why does this story still matter so much? Because it was never just a Wall Street story. It became a Main Street story. Millions of ordinary people lost their homes, their jobs, their life savings. It laid bare a brutal truth, that the kind of greed that chases short-term gain, it has devastating, real-world consequences. Sure, new rules were written, but the collapse also left this deep, lingering scar of mistrust in the very systems that we're all supposed to rely on.
And that brings us to the final, unsettling question. Lehman Brothers is gone, yes, but the forces that built it, that relentless hunger for profit, no matter the risk, those things are still very much with us. And it forces us to ask, are we just doomed to watch this happen all over again?